Okay, class, so we're back. Now we'll do the last of these set of mini lectures on the fundamental economics of agriculture and food. I'm going to share my screen again. Back to this slide here about the refinements that we can make to producer theory. Okay. So let's think about the simple economics of exchange. This is a quote. Here's an important quote from Adam Smith, a famous economist from 1776, an economist and kind of moral philosopher. He came up with this idea of the invisible hand. And the quote is, "It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we can expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interest. And by directing that industry in such a manner as his produce may be of the greatest value, he intends only his own gain, and he is in this, as in many other cases, led by an invisible hand to promote an end which was no part of his intention." Adam Smith, 1776. So the story is that when we have consumers having, in a case, the right preferences, when prices are set in the market in the right way, when people have the right incomes, the right level of income, then, on the supply side, we have internalization of prices and people operate to maximize their profit, and profit maximizing agents internalize all of the costs. When all of these things hold, then the invisible hand of the market will equate quantity consumed and quantity supplied at one equilibrium price and one equilibrium quantity that makes the most people the most happy without any government intervention. So this is the story then. Back to our demand function. So we have demand as quantity demanded as a function of the price of the good. We have a way of measuring the well-being of consumers on this graph, which is using this idea of consumer surplus. So consumer surplus is the total of the difference between what consumers would be willing to, what consumers actually pay, and what they'd be willing to pay given the happiness that they get from the product. So if we look at a price P2 double hash there, at that price, the consumers are able to consume Q double prime. So P double time price, I'm able to buy Q double prime amount of the product. I get consumer surplus from that because every unit up to Q double prime, the amount that I'm willing to pay, which is measured by the demand function, is more than the amount that I do pay, which is price P double prime. So the first unit that I buy, I get consumer surplus of E minus P double prime. The last unit, I get zero that I consume at the Q double prime unit quantity. I get zero consumer surplus. If I add that up across all of the units from 0 to Q double prime, I get a measure of the benefit that I get from operating in this market, which is the area, the triangle E or DEF. We have a similar thing on the producer side. We have a way of measuring producer well-being using the supply function. So the supply function maps the cost of producing units of output relative to the price of the output. We have we assume this is upward sloping. The first unit that we produce has a cost to us of C. We get it for that. If we just sold that in the market, we get a price of P prime. We get a producer surplus of P prime minus C. That's the amount that of profit we get from that unit. So we want to produce more to get more profits. We produce a little bit more. Well, we get the difference between P prime and that cost. We keep producing more and more and more. So we have to think about this marginal analysis again, marginal choice. We get right to the point of Q prime and say, we get zero extra profit from producing anything for Q prime. So we want to produce Q prime, not a little bit more. If we produce a little bit more, then our costs would be less than the price that we get. So we settle on Q prime is the optimal amount at price P prime. That's the optimal amount of output for us to produce. Okay. So overall, if we sum that across all of the units between 0 and Q prime, we get the triangle measure of profit or producer surplus of A, B, and C. Okay. Let's put those two things together, which is our market equilibrium. So this is putting supply and demand on the same function. We have that and we say where those things equate, where they intersect. We get our equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So if equilibrium price is P star, equilibrium quantity is Q star, and we'll generally use that in most economics courses as equilibrium. And at that point, producers don't want to produce any more because they would lose. They don't want to produce any less because on that last unit that they produce, they still make a little bit of profit. At P prime, Q prime, consumers don't want to consume any less because they still get enjoyment from that last unit that they're buying. They don't want to consume any more because that enjoyment they would get would be less than the price that they would have to pay. So we get this equilibrium there where consumers are happy and producers are happy. So it's stable, right? So people don't have reason to move either way from that. And it happens to be that quantity and price, that the total of producer surplus, which is that area above the price line below the demand function, plus consumer surplus, which is the area above supply function below price line, that the sum of those is the most. So we can do a lot of math about that to show that that equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity, not only is it stable in the market, it is the best that all of the producers and all the consumers can do together in that marketplace. So it is stable, and measuring these two measures, consumer surplus plus producer surplus, as our welfare indicator, our economic welfare indicator, we're maximizing economic welfare without, with basically having the visible hand lead us to that situation without the government telling us that that's where we must be. Okay. Okay, so let's think about the refinements. We had refinements on, so we had this kind of simple market, simple model of consumer behavior, the simple model of producer behavior about maximizing profits, consumer behavior of maximizing happiness from consumption, and then we have this market. Let's think about the market. Is it really so great? Well, first of all, it depends on income. So for people and consumers who just don't have enough income, right, because of some disability or they're unemployed or there's COVID-19 lock-in, they don't have enough income, then they're not in a position to buy adequate diet or a healthy diet. So this market working means that there is income in the society in total, and that income is distributed so that people can actually afford to pay market clearing prices and have a healthy diet. And we'll see later, for most of the world, that isn't the case, right? Majority of people in the world, they really don't have the income for a purely healthy diet that's healthy for themselves and healthy for the planet. The other thing is that with that market clearing situation, consumers might not get the information, all the information that they wanted, right? So they may not be happy with the products which are available on the market. Some people are going to say it's not enough for me just to pay and know that some producer somewhere is benefiting from that, they're getting some profit. We might worry about who gets that profit, right? And so if they are, then they're not just focusing on the price and the marginal happiness they get from consuming that thing, but more about the kind of their behavior and the relationship that's associated with their engagement in the market. And also we know that for many people, the inputs and output markets, they have built-in kind of biases in them. Not everyone's paying the same prices for inputs. Not everyone has the same access to output prices. For example, and I'm representing this example by the photo at the bottom, in Uganda is a landlocked country in East Africa that gets fertilizer that is shipped from Europe, comes into port and dock in Mombasa, Kenya, goes overland from Kenya to the Uganda border, has to cross a border, sometimes has to change a truck when it crosses the border, then goes to the capital city, where it's offloaded, put into other trucks, and brought back to eastern Uganda. It's been estimated that by the time that the product gets to the Ugandan capital, it's 2 or 3 times the world market price. By the time it actually gets to the farmer, it may be 8 to 9 times world market price. And so farmers are doing this using, so here's a farmer who is taking fertilizer in the bottle cap and applying it to an individual corn plant because that's such a precious resource for them. So we have this kind of variety of situations where as we get into this class, we're going to be kind of drilling down in each of these kind of special cases that are important to us. I'm going to stop there, and that ends this series of lectures.